So, welcome to the video. I am Ray Dusseault, a strategic account director for Kasm Workspaces, and I'll let Jeff introduce himself.
Thanks, Ray. Jeff Peterson. I'm one of the solutions architects here at Kasm Workspaces.
So, the purpose of this video is to dive into the world of higher education and how Kasm Workspaces can adjust its features and workflows to accommodate a number of different workflows in the higher education space. And what we're finding is across all kinds of different verticals. It's not just traditional higher education. Elements of this can be applied to all kinds of elements of enterprises, whether they be IoT, OT, cybersecurity. So I think it's a very fascinating space for Kasm to get into. And so Jeff and I, mainly Jeff, are going to be showcasing this today.
So yeah, the features of Kasm with a centrally managed virtual workspace, they definitely parlay well into the education workspaces for screen sharing, for having minimal footprint, for deploying and configuring easily versus having a huge footprint and a bunch of IT people on staff to manage and maintain the platform. So
at a high level, how about if we start with, I think a great place to start is a simple installation of Kasm Workspaces. Is there any way that you could showcase that right now?
Sure. Yeah. It's literally 4 steps. So let me pull it up for you right here. Get that demo underway. All right. So I have my host set up, and I'm going to pull my commands. All right, so just going to go to docs.kasm.com, and we're going to do a single server installation for this demo. And here's my commands. So I'm going to get the latest version of 118.1 and paste them into my SSH. And then I downloaded the binary, and I'm going to accept my EULA. And I'm just going to let it do its magic. And within 5 minutes or so, we should have some credentials to put into our web browser to start configuring the platform and using it in short order.
And where are you installing this right now? Because a lot of times I get asked, are you on-prem? Are you cloud? Are you both? Are you neither? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, in this case, I happen to be in cloud, but the steps are the same, really, whether you're going to install this in the cloud or on-prem or even a hybrid. Kasm is platform agnostic in that regard to get it installed and working. So pretty simple to get a Kasm going wherever you want to test it out or to operate it.
Thank you.
All right, so it's going to ask me here if I want to swap partition. It is optional, but recommended, so I'm going to say yes. And since it's a small demo environment, I think 4 gigs is plenty. But if you were going to run a large number of concurrent sessions, you would want a larger page file. All right, so that was pretty quick. I had to answer only a few questions, and I have my credentials. I'm going to save these off because they are required to get into the system, and I don't want to lose them. So I'm going to paste these into my tracker over here. All right, I have a self-signed cert, so I'm going to proceed and put my credentials in. All right, and now I'm logged into the brand new install. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so Jeff, you and I have been around the block a few times. That seems like a pretty simple install and concise. That was very impressive.
Yeah, Kasm is definitely one of the easier platforms to get up and running. And then to configure, you could just then start looking at users if you wanted to, and workspaces. So access managers is who's your users in your groups. You could add them very easily, and you could go to your workspaces registry and start installing workspaces within 10 minutes.
That might be an interesting transition point. So if you could talk about what Kasm considers a workspace and or what workspace options, it's Linux or Windows or both, or can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, surely. So these workspaces that I'm looking at, these are all Linux-based workspaces. So whether they're desktops or applications, And they are in image files, which will then be pulled down and turned into containers, which means you're going to have a shared kernel, which is much less resources to maintain hundreds or thousands of concurrent sessions versus having full stack VMs. So this is really where you get the efficiencies with Kasm is the entire backend of Kasm is based on containers. And then the containerized workspaces here come in our registry that we maintain. We patch these on a nightly basis, and you can simply come over here and grab them, or you can build your own registry if you really wanted to and have your own pipeline. But then to extend the functionality of Kasm into I'll say legacy resources like full stack VMs that you already have in your data center, whether it's Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. You could then also create infrastructure and add them in as a server. And so now you can use a standard RDP protocol, a standard SSH or VNC protocol to get to your servers you already have, centralize the access through Kasm with SSO or LDAP, and then Kasm can translate these protocols back to WebSocket, to browser native, web native for you and your users, so they don't have to install any thick client to get in. Everybody has a browser, greatly simplifies the rollout of Kasm.
And to that, from a SSO sort of element, I'm assuming that you can support things like Okta and Azure AD and some of those other elements into
For sure, yeah. Azure, any LDAP, SAML, OpenID, and two-factor, whether it's YubiKey or what have you, Kasm can build that in so that everybody is secure to your environment.
Yeah, that's extremely beneficial from a customer perspective, where we're not forcing them to use any one platform. We can sort of bend around whatever they have. That's been received very well across a number of the customers that I've been dealing with. So thank you for that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, one of our core features is to plug into whatever workflow you already had that's really Kasm's customizable to fit that mold.
Can you launch a session now at this point, or can you enable a workspace and then we'll see it launch and then we can...
Definitely. You saw me earlier go to the registry page and download a few. So if I look at my workspaces, they are here. They're enabled by default. If I wanted to, I could go into either one of them and I could make changes. If I wanted to say, well, this workspace, I know they're going to be doing a lot of tabs, right? Chrome is great, but it does use CPU and RAM, the more tabs. So if I wanted to double everything, I could just do that before I even launch it.
Oh, fascinating. So you're suggesting that you could manipulate the resources per container depending upon the workspace? Wow, that is...
Yeah. I would say per workspace. So if this Chrome right here is going to be for developers who are going to use Chrome with lots of tabs, and I know they're going to be doing a lot of work, in this workspace, I'm going to up their resources and I could save it. And then I could take the same workspace and clone it. And then I could put it back down, either which way I wanted to do. So this Chrome here is just for people who only use one or two tabs. So I probably don't want to name it clone, but just regular Chrome. Now I have two workspaces that I could divvy up per group and say, well, I'll assign this one to my developer group and I'll assign this one to my regular population so that my resources stay somewhat constrained.
Because this just came up on a call for me a couple hours ago, could you elaborate on either the shared persistent profile element or the shared storage element? And you don't have to go too far, but that I find that fascinating, how we can tie into whatever storage platform the customer wants and tie that back into this.
Yeah, on these containerized workspaces, they're very flexible. So Kasm has this option of doing persistent profile path, and this is a browser. So sometimes you want a browser to maintain history and you want to maintain cookies and bookmarks and personalizations, profiles. Kasm will do that here with the persistent profile path so that every time this particular user be a variable based on their user ID and their workspace ID, you put those variables in so that Kasm would track that persistent data every time they launch the session, but the actual Chrome itself is built fresh from the image, brand new. So if something were to happen to my Chrome instance, I could still maintain my persistent data, but I would just destroy that session and then build a brand new one every single time I logged in, which is the default stance for all these sessions. And so I'm kind of eliminating that advanced persistent threat vector with these profiles.
Would you say that that leans into the concept of a home drive that sort of follows the user around? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it's similar to like a home drive or profile. Saves that data, but not all the data that maybe malicious websites or malicious extensions may have done to your Chrome. So now I have it. I have two of them. I look at my workspaces here, and now my user has access to 3 workspaces, but I could easily restrict any user or group to only show 1 or 2 workspaces, just to make things simple for them. This one is still downloading. You can see here, it's not ready to launch yet. But if I launch one Chrome, now Kasm is orchestrating a brand new container in the back end for me, and then I'll be able to use it to browse wherever I want to, either internal or external, wherever the networking allows me to go. And once I decide I'm done with the session, Kasm destroys the entire container so that when I build a new image, I'm guaranteed it's a clean image every time.
Okay, Jeff, that was awesome. I would say now, from as we stated at the start of the video, this is geared towards higher education.
Right.
So is it a fair statement to say that do we have the ability to showcase or establish Kasm as a platform for training labs and classroom environments? I'll stop there. Is that
Absolutely.
okay? So then I guess a follow-up to that with respect to the video, is it also your feeling that we can establish various modules for elements like cybersecurity and,
Of course.
generic classroom experiences?
Yeah, customizations, of course.
All right. And again, there is a Linuxy type flavor to a lot of what we do. And there isn't really going to be a lot of Windows in this video, but the Windows OS is absolutely in our world. But I think this video is going to be very non-Windowsy today. And that's not by intention. That's just we're going to establish a baseline. So if you could demonstrate a Linux flavor desktop and sort of walk through some of that experience, I think that would be great.
Yeah, let's see what we have downloaded here, Ray, for sure. So this is pre-populated with a few workspaces. I happen to know Kali Linux is a desktop, maybe not a productivity desktop, but either way, it's a desktop, full-fledged. And it comes with certain tools built in and certain look and feel. We pull down from Kali and we maintain it in our registry. You could use that base image, anyone that is in our registry, and you could customize it to different groups. Similar to the workspace that we'd done earlier, you could say that you might want more resources. You could add additional tools. So this one comes with a lot of tools already installed on it, but you could add your own tools or you could remove tools. Your own shared storage. So a lot of times when you're working, you want to have access to centralized storage, whether it's NFS, S3, OneDrive, Google Drive, cloud storage. You can attach them to your workspace, and then that workspace is then assigned to a group, or less ideally, I guess, a user, but most frequently you'd assign workspaces to groups. So they all receive the same experience with persistent profiles, with shared storage, with access to the apps they need, and to the patching that your organization requires. And that really makes flexibility in the operational maintenance of Kasm shine, is what it does. When we're talking about Linux containers, it's all in the pipeline. You build it once and you deploy it many times. It's akin to a golden image in Windows, but if you've ever had to maintain golden images, they are quite overhead.
Because we didn't address it last time, could you just quickly show the DLP controls? Because I think this would be a good time as we're stepping through the next as to what we can configure and control in that respect.
Certainly, yeah. DLP controls is a big topic as far as needs and wants. So getting virtual desktops is great and all, but how do you control the data going into the environment and data coming out of the environment? And that's where it's built into Kasm with this DLP slider here that you can move it around. But you as the admin can control what groups of users or single users are allowed to do when they interact with the workspace. So clipboard is great for ease of use, but sometimes you're working on sensitive data that you don't want people exfiltrating. So you may choose to restrict this. Same thing with the upload and download files. That's really how Kasm was born, to protect the data inside of the virtual environment by restricting access to clipboard, restricting file upload and download. But yet you could still interact with the data and you could collaborate and work together with large groups of teams. You can see the other ones we have here, printers. Yeah, I think those are the DLP controls.
So it's safe to say that any flavor of Linux could be a container or custom image inside Kasm.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say it has to be built off of our You have the best success rate building your base flavor off of our base images in
Yep.
our GitHub repository, which we have pretty good coverage for. We have Fedora, we have Rocky, Red Hat, Ubuntu, amongst others, Oracle. So we run a large swath of distros. We don't necessarily maintain them all, but yeah, I think it depends on the graphics rendering. I think by default here we're using XFCE, which is a lightweight graphics engine. Some of those distros come with a KDE or graphics intensive GUIs, and that's probably not the sweet spot for Kasm. What's one of the beauties of Kasm is you can just have an application. So we're going to pick on only Office here. If I have a set of users that need Office productivity apps, why not just give them the app? Just make everybody's life a little simpler by giving them a single app in a Kasm workspace with the same DLP controls, and that you don't have to worry about them having access to a command shell or to a browser if they don't need a browser or whatever comes with a full desktop app. So here I have access to my documents. I can still attach my storage. They can still access the centralized storage or the persistent profile storage, or both in tandem, to work on docs, save them to a safe place, delete the session, delete the container, and come back the next day or whenever they want and have access to the same apps and folders and docs. It's fully customizable to whatever you need to give your workers to be productive.
I think based on what you're showing me here, I think this leans into probably the first real higher education threshold. If you click on the DLP control button, I'm assuming by saying shared session, you could then share this document with other students and they could all work on it essentially at the same time. Maybe not typing at the same time.
Right.
They could ask for control and they could collaborate. So is that where we're going with this?
Yeah, for education, that's perfect. So I just click the button to share my session, and now you can see it changed my resolution to like the lowest common resolution that maybe some distant party would have on their computer. I would share this link with them, and they could log in and see me work live on this document. So while they might not have write access to the session, they could certainly view it and give me real-time feedback on what I needed to change, or if I'm the instructor, what they think the answer is. We could collaborate on this together. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I think we'll cover that again later, but I thought that
Yeah.
was an interesting time with phase one of classroom scenario. That's actually a fascinating element for students and teachers alike and education alike. I suppose it's also any level of education. It's not just higher education. I could see this being high schools and K through 12 that could do this, especially now that Chromebooks are rampant.
Yeah, exactly. This could be used on a number of different education levels that you'd want to share content live with your students.
Okay, Jeff, that was a great walkthrough of some of the basic higher education type features of Kasm. I would say another thing that comes up quite a bit, in my opinion, is higher end applications, graphical
Right.
workloads,
Right.
the concept of AutoCAD, not only just for architectural schools, but
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
engineering fields. Does Kasm have the ability to accommodate that kind of workload that is very graphical intensive?
Most definitely. Yeah. It's definitely expensive to buy a dedicated GPU, a dedicated workstation, a dedicated AutoCAD license for every single person in your org that needs access to that type of workload. So what Chasm does is we could absolutely support AutoCAD. I don't have an AutoCAD license. They are pretty pricey
What?
just for demonstration purposes, but I do have a free open source variant called Blender. So we maintain this on our registry. And you can configure Chasm to utilize high-end GPUs and slice them so you can get more than one user access to the GPU resources to do workloads like Blender. So I can demonstrate that for you first without a GPU and then with the GPU so you can see the difference.
Just in case I misheard you, you are saying that we can absolutely support elements like AutoCAD and other high-end graphical applications, but today we're just going to demonstrate Blender. Is that what you're saying?
Right, yeah, Chasm supports GPU pass-through, and you can use that GPU for any number of applications, whether it's Blender, AI, machine learning, all types of computational tasks. That's the beauty of Chasm, is you can share those resources without having to buy a powerhouse desktop for each and every person. All right, you're gonna have to have a little bit of patience here because this workspace has Blender with no GPU attached. So its CPU is trying to go through this model, and it's gonna be painfully slow, as you'd
Yeah,
expect.
I think people would understand that because based on my years of application experience, I think they'd understand that regardless of what resources we throw in here, trying to paint highly graphical application
Right.
is
This is
not.
not optimized for this type of workspace.
No.
So we could sit here and watch it move painfully slow, or we could just add a GPU to this workspace
Yeah.
and redo the same steps and see how much improvement we get. I'm going to edit my Blender workspace, and I'm going to switch my GPU count to 1. Pretty simple change. I'm going to open up the workspace again, upload my model. All right, so we're going to draw the environment, and we can already see an improvement here.
I think it's safe to say that it's a combination of both GPU and resources in the container. And like you can tell that it's painting, and this isn't, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a basic Blender design
Correct.
application that's like free. So I think that the GPU is really where you're allowing the graphically intense horsepower to be added on top of and sliced. That's really impressive.
Certainly, yeah. The gains here are massive, and just being able to split that GPU amongst multiple users is also a huge benefit to using container workspaces versus dedicated workstations.
I don't want to make this weird, but it seems like you're making a pretty nice room there, Jeff. I think you missed your calling from graphical architectural design guy.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty easy to navigate with the GPU on it, right?
Now, you just mentioned AI workloads
Yeah,
for graphical workflows. Is that something you're ready to touch on here?
yeah. We can go ahead and leave this workspace here and delete the session. And so happen to have a couple of AI tool and machine learning workspaces. So again, you can attach GPUs to these workspaces, and you can control in your DLP, your upload, download, and clipboard if you have sensitive data inside of it.
Because you had mentioned earlier the workspaces registry. Is that where this is coming from?
Precisely, yeah. We have an AI specific registry for AI tools and AI developers.
Perfect. That isn't something I'd considered because now the idea of a quickly spun up container, I'm not an AI guy by any stretch, but when I hear that it takes weeks and months to configure and get all your LLMs into one spot and have everything connect,
Yeah,
that's where the burden is. And so I think what you just spun up in a few seconds, a
yeah,
container that has cut through all of that chaos, and now it is an easy to consume, easy to use, AI model, but it still is customizable and add-onable. Is that a fair statement?
right. Yeah. I mean, you have one admin who does the workspace maintenance or the workspace configuration, and then the users just get to consume and build it as code. So whatever I build, all the environment variables are already built. All the dependencies are already in there. I just have to do my work.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about what got messed up with the last update. It definitely eases the operational overhead of all this.
I suppose it's also not lost on me now that you just did it in a DoD hardened, secure way, containerized way with it. So it's almost like you're protecting not only the container itself, but your AI data and how you're accessing AI. That seems like another powerful component. That's interesting.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, data is valuable, so you want to protect the data as well as the workspace and the endpoint.
Now I'm having an interesting sort of out of body experience. If you're a university, you're being asked to consume AI in the
Yes.
classroom and out of the classroom for its curriculum and whatnot. But now I'm assuming train AI
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and how to do either end of that spectrum. So I believe I'm correct in saying that what you're showing me now could be another module in a Kasm higher education curriculum element sitting on top of the core higher education Kasm workflows.
Absolutely. It can fill so many different use cases. Your imagination is pretty much the limit here.
That's powerful. Do you want to touch on any of the other apps that are here? And
Uh,
I wonder if you could show what's in the AI workspace registry for a second.
yeah, let's do that. So here's the registry. Looks like it's already installed.
So that's an interesting point, is that you can pick and choose, but basically once you've added the AI workspaces registry, those are
Yes.
just available containers to that user. Then you can pick and choose who gets access to what based on their groups, users, or what have you.
That's right. Once the registry is installed here, all the available workspaces will show up for consumption for download here. So here we have a TensorFlow workspace we could download. We have a CUDA we could download. And then once they're downloaded, we can manipulate them, all the details on the workspaces screen. And then we can go to groups, assign them to whatever groups we think are appropriate. And then they'll show up on the user's workspaces screen, which is all the users will see. and they can interact with them.
Okay, so Jeff, I heard you say a couple of things over the last
Right.
little bit, and one thing that sort of kicked in with relation to the modules like data sciences. You said the phrase custom images. Could you go into a little bit of that as to what that means from a Kasm perspective, and then how it
Yeah,
applies?
so you're probably familiar, right, with like golden images,
Yes.
templates for Windows, and custom image is something akin to that. But in this case, we're going to take a Kasm Workspaces base image with all the necessary requirements and components to get your DLP controls. And then we're going to add whatever layers you want on top of that. And so in this case, I'm going to show you a data science custom image that we made with Jupyter Notebooks. So it looks like a standard Ubuntu desktop, but we have put on Jupyter Notebooks here, and very popular tool. And in this way, you now have access to Kasm updates to the base image on an automatic basis, as well as your own layers on top of it, whatever suits your workflow in an easy to consume manner. So you can distribute this to as many or as few workers as you needed to. With the beauty of zero touch patching on the base image, we'll take care of that for you.
That's fascinating. So again, back to the module approach, you could have a university that would have a course on history using only Office, PowerPoint, doesn't matter, instructor-led curriculum uploaded into the container and then shared to all of its students. Then you have a hack the box element for cybersecurity, course loads, and now we're diving into the data sciences element. Wow, this is powerful. This is very exciting.
Yeah, I can show you the Hack the Box demo as well. So this is a custom image for Juice Shop Lab, a common vulnerable web app application that you can teach your students. And it's built off of, in this case, it's the Docker and Docker, but we're going to show you how to use this at the simple click of a button.
I guess one question I have is that, and I do get asked this a little bit. So Kasm does not want to be in the business of being an expert in all of these tools. We're just excited to provide the platform that people can use them. Would you agree with that statement?
Definitely, yeah. The number of applications you can use Kasm for is immense. We certainly have a lot of in-house experience, but not on every single app. But the use cases are all very similar. So you can expand the application, the platform, to reach many use cases. It's more than a VDI platform. I mean, this is really a strategic enabler for your company. So here we go.
Perfect. Yeah, this one in particular, I could see as cybersecurity threats are spreading across essentially any vertical, any industry, be DoD or DoD adjacent, and now commercial enterprise. And what's interesting that I just reflected on? It's not just a university training students. It's almost an enterprise would have to train its own employees to then protect themselves. So this kind of Kasm platform could be applied to either commercial enterprise or a university or everything in between.
Certainly, yeah. If you have a blue team, a red team, a purple team, they could certainly take advantage of Kasm to quickly spin up environments, attack scenarios, see the results, contain it, blow it away when you're done with it. It's much lighter on resources, and it's much easier to configure than the traditional hypervisor, full stack VM, and all the stuff that is intertwined with that.
It's so interesting that you just said the red team, blue team angle, because that came up on a call the other day in the industrial sector, and the customer was pretty excited about how Kasm could help. So I'm excited that you brought that up, because that is a critical component as well, where we can integrate into existing workflows.
Yes.
And that's sort of the lost art is, here's some software, change everything, and now do it this way.
Yeah.
And that's a slippery slope in any vertical or horizontal. But for us to be able to say, build on us, and you have the flexibility, either use this in production or training in the same environment, that's
right.
That's extremely powerful. So, Jeff, based on what you just showed, this is not my world. Is it safe to say that that element could be used as a pen testing or cybersecurity lab from the jump? And you could bend that around a number of elements. Is that what we're talking?
Certainly, right. Yeah, whenever you're talking about the pen testing world, you're literally breaking boxes or infecting boxes, and Kasm is a perfect use case to do your work, get the results, document, destroy it, and then start clean and start fresh again in a fast and a lightweight manner.
Landing the plane from a higher education space and recreating or emulating that classroom training experience. I wonder if we dive down a bit further into that only office type element, the classroom training. Is that something that you'd be willing to do now?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have two ways to accomplish this. We can do a session sharing, so you can view what I'm working on in real time. I can give you a session sharing link, or I could do a session casting link and let you log in either with credentials or anonymously to have your own session. So let's go through both here. So in my admin screen here, you can see I've created a new casting link here. And if I edit it, you can see I just gave it a name and a URL key, which I'll copy that in my clipboard so I can give it to you. And then I pick my workspace that I want my session casting to display for the user. And then to make it easy, I'm just gonna make it anonymous, but you don't have to do that. You could credential and they'd have to have a Kasm user ID and password or an SSO user ID and password.
Assuming any type of authentication that the customer wanted could be applied here, just like every other Kasm.
Certainly.
Got it.
You can either do things like limit their sessions and limit their rate requests per IP so that you can kind of lock this down.
So did you email it?
There it is. You got it?
Okay. So I have pasted that into my browser window. Wow, that was fast. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. So with no agent, correct, on the endpoint, I've just from a casting link, I've tunneled into your office that you're hosting in your Kasm environment, and I have full DLP controls. Wow.
Exactly. Instrumenting the application via your browser. None of the execution is happening on your endpoint. All the execution is happening in Kasm, and you'd have access to any shared storage or persistent profile storage that you could work on this document day in, day out.
Wow. Not to attack Microsoft, but that only office seems pretty cool from an open source sort of deal. Now we're going to get sued, but anyways, here we go.
It's taken off.
Yeah.
All right, so the second option after casting links is screen sharing. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you that right here. I'm going to open up my Only Office. You can do this with any app or any desktop. All right, I got my document. And this is cool doc. But I'm not done working on it. I need some help. So I'm going to phone a friend here. I need Ray. So I'm going to do share instance, share my session, reduce my resolution. And my URL is copied to the clipboard. So I'm going to go and share that with Ray. All right, so I can see Ray is in the session. And now he can view and help me finish this doc together and give me pointers on when I typo or whatever instructions is needed in real time.
That's impressive.
Yeah, this would be a very useful feature for any type of collaboration, student teacher or student to student.
I think the coolest thing is that I could easily visualize an auditorium where a university is trying to get as many butts and seats as possible. I think post-COVID, in my opinion, universities are struggling to figure out their way in the world and what students require from how to get their education, how to get their curriculum. So something like this, you could have a classroom that seats 40 physical, but still offer another 40, another 80. It doesn't matter because they're just joining remotely this and watching. As I think we've laid out today, all of these curriculums are different on every level, but at a core basic PowerPoint slideware type, watch my screen type teaching element that K through 12, high school, higher education, internal enterprise training. I think this could easily apply to any platform, correct? I mean,
correct. Yeah. Pair programming, you just name it.
Well, Jeff, thank you for your time today. This has been tremendously helpful in addition to being powerful from a higher education perspective for Kasm customers. I really appreciate your time today and thank you.
My pleasure, yeah.